My Lord, I'm a member of one of the smallest, if not the smallest, religious community in the world, the Zoroastrian Parsis. People often say, who? And I say, well, Freddie Mercury of Queen. Ah, Zubin Mehta, the conductor. Oh, the Tatars. Well, we are less than 100,000 in the whole world, and we emigrated to India from Persia from the 8th century onwards to escape persecution and forced conversion to Islam. In many ways and respects, history is comprised of threads that bind memories of the distant past with the present day. What connects modern aspects of faith with the religion of Cyrus the Great and Xerxes? The British Empire is the largest empire the world has ever known. But in 480 BC, it is estimated that 50 million people lived in the Achaemenid Empire, approximately 44% of the world's population at the time. And this figure would make the Persian Empire the largest ever in the world in its history in terms of the percentage of the world's population at the time. And we look at Cyrus as Cyrus the Great, the harbinger of one of the greatest empires of the ancient world. And he's known for two things. The first is Cyrus's cylinder, perhaps the first recognizable model legal instrument. And in the United Kingdom, of course, we consider the vital role of the Magna Carta. And when I show people around Parliament, I always point out the facsimile of the Salisbury copy of the Magna Carta in the Sovereign's robing room. And of course, in terms of European history, the Magna Carta is old, 1215. And as co-chair of the Zoroastrian APPG in 2015, to celebrate the 800th anniversary of Magna Carta, I held an event comparing Magna Carta with Cyrus's cylinder. And people rightly consider Magna Carta to be the first Bill of Rights, but it's actually very new in comparison with Cyrus's cylinder. That was created in 530 BC. And the cylinder notes the most important aspects of Cyrus's humility and tolerance, which form vital aspects of the entire tradition of the Zoroastrian faith. And this is especially when you consider the role that Cyrus played, not just in the protection, but the active promotion of many different religions and faiths that flourished in the Persian Empire during this time. He cites his building projects in territories that he conquered, and I quote, "I rebuilt sanctuaries and chapels that lay in ruins. The deities of Sumer and Akkad and Nabonidus had, to the fury of the people, brought to Shana. I returned unharmed to their rightful sanctuaries. I've returned all the deities to their sanctuaries and restored their temples." So it's rightly seen as a major artifact in world history, representing the first detailed look at statecraft within a multi-ethnic society. And there's a direct link between the protection and patronage of the Zoroastrian community under Cyrus, as well as the role that they enjoy in India, the United Kingdom, and the world today. Secondly, Cyrus is known for his magnanimity, and a specific example being that concerned with the refuge he gave to the Jews in Egypt. The Old Testament and the Torah both note this, and I quote from a passage in the book of Ezra, "Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he hath charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah." So he was determined to ensure that the territories that he conquered, often lands that had been under the domination of other empires, had their traditional forms of worship and religious practices restored to the people who lived there. And Babylonians and Jews alike considered Cyrus as being on a mission from their individual concept of God. This country, my lords, has, I believe, always been a truly pluralist, secular country, where all religions are not just allowed to practice their beliefs, not just tolerated, but increasingly celebrated. And with less than 1% of the world's population, the UK is still the 6th largest economy in the world, and that would not be the case without the economic and cultural contribution of our ethnic minority communities, including the Jewish community. The Jewish community around the world numbers 16 million out of 8 billion people on this planet. And look at the contribution that they have made and they make every single day in every single field, whether it's politics, whether it's business, whether it's the arts, whether it's the professions. And as Noble Lady Baroness Scott, in her excellent opening speech, she said, in spite of this, we have anti-Semitism at its highest level ever since October the 7th, 20,000 incidents, and this is around the world as well. Children are scared to go to school. As Chancellor of the University of Birmingham, I know that Jewish students are worried about persecution at university. We've heard about Mike Freer, Minister and MP, standing down out of fear and out of the persecution, the horrible persecution that he has been inflicted upon. What is going on? How can we tolerate and allow all this anti-Semitism and, quite frankly, Jew-hating? This cannot take place. My lords, the best way to predict the future is to look to the past. To put things into perspective, it was 80 years from the end of the US Civil War, when the country nearly destroyed itself, to World War II. It is now 80 years since the end of World War II and the Nazi regime's genocide and the horror of the Holocaust. 6 million Jews were brutally murdered. Visiting Auschwitz, we've heard Noble Lord Pollock in his superb speech. It is, anyone who visits Auschwitz, something you never forget, and you constantly think, how can any human being do this to anyone else? When I visited Yad Vashem, the best museum and the worst museum that I've ever visited in my life, the horrors revealed and explained. That's why you leave Yad Vashem and you say, never again. All our children must learn about the Holocaust from a very, very early age, from primary school all the way until they finish school. Can the Noble Lady, the Minister, assure us that this is happening in every single school in this land? In October 2022, I was invited on an official visit to Bangladesh, and the first event that I spoke at was at the Liberation War Museum. My late father, Lieutenant General Bilimoria, who retired as Commander-in-Chief of the Central Army in India, as a Lieutenant Colonel, commanded the 2nd 5th Gurkha Rifles Frontier Force in the liberation of Bangladesh in 1971. And I remember my father as a boy telling me of the horrors that he had witnessed, the stories that he had heard, the bravery of the freedom fighters, the Mukti Bani, many of them who were teenagers fighting for their freedom, the horrors inflicted by West Pakistan on East Pakistan. It was nothing short of genocide. And the Noble Lady, the Minister, spoke of the genocides that have taken place since the Second World War, since the Holocaust, of Cambodia, of Rwanda, this being the 30th anniversary of the Rwandan genocide. Surely we should recognize what happened in what is today Bangladesh as genocide. Would the Noble Lady, the Minister, agree this? And can the Minister assure us that our new Holocaust Memorial, our new museum, will be as impressive and as effective as Yad Vashem and the Liberation War Museum in Bangladesh? In May last year, organized by ELNET, I was a member of the House of Lords delegation to Israel. We came away from that visit completely deflated and disappointed with the political situation in Israel. Our visit to the West Bank, the disappointment with the situation there, with Fatah and the Palestinian Authority, with no elections, with Fatah not talking to Hamas, and we spent a whole day on the Gaza border. We also learned that the young Palestinians have no faith or respect in their leadership. And that day on the Gaza border is a day I will never forget, when we visited the Karem Shalom crossing. And to think, not for 1 minute were we worried about the security in Israel. Not for 1 minute did one of us predict that just a few months later, the horrors of October the 7th, the pogrom committed by Hamas, the brutal murder, rape, torture, worse than anyone's worst nightmare. Brutality beyond belief. 1,200 innocent Israelis killed, thousands more wounded, over 240 hostages taken, including Holocaust survivors and babies. My lords, what Hamas's objective is pure genocide, wiping out the state of Israel. What has happened since the 7th of October has been tragic. The tens of thousands of innocent men, women, and children being killed and wounded in Gaza. Hostages are still there, over 130 of them. They must be released now. And Israel is still trying to remove Hamas and free the people of Gaza from their terror. And yet the Hamas leadership have said what happened on October the 7th, they will do it again. My lords, recently I met Jamal Nusseibeh, a Palestinian-American lawyer who has a PhD from Columbia University. He's a barrister trained in the UK and was a professor at Al-Quds University in Jerusalem for a number of years. And on the 6th of January, he wrote an excellent article in Time magazine titled "Only US-led intervention can bring peace to the Middle East." And he said the current humanitarian political disaster unfolding in Israel and the Palestinian territories requires immediate international intervention. And he goes on to say the US should lead a multilateral peacekeeping force with regional Arab and international allies to physically intervene in Gaza and the West Bank and end hostilities within a political framework which will resolve the Arab-Israeli conflict. While this may sound far-fetched, it is the only realistic solution to a long-standing and intractable problem, and it would be in the US interest. My lords, isn't it ironic that there we were in May when we thought a two-state solution would never, ever happen? And yet the horrors of October the 7th and the 4 months since then could actually lead to a two-state solution which will bring peace to the region, peace to Israel, and the creation of a Palestinian state, and democracy and security for all. We in the UK have a major part to play in this. We may not be a superpower anymore, but we are a global power. We are at the top table of the world, whether it's the UN Security Council P5, whether it's G7, whether it's the G20, whether it's NATO. So, my lords, I conclude with this. I was very fortunate to have known Archbishop Desmond Tutu. We were fellows at Sydney Sussex College, my college at Cambridge, and we were fellows at Kellogg College at Oxford, and we used to address each other in our correspondence as fellow. And I once asked him, I said, you knew Nelson Mandela really well. What was so great about Nelson Mandela? What made him so special? What made him such a great leader? And he said Nelson Mandela was magnanimous. Cyrus the Great was magnanimous. This week, on the 30th of January, we remembered Mahatma Gandhi, because that is the day that he was assassinated. And my grandmother, Rati Bilimoria, was in the house next door, and I've known about that from my childhood. That one man stood against the British Empire, and he defeated it because he believed in might versus right. He believed in non-violence, and he said, and I quote him, "I'm prepared to die, but there is no cause for which I'm prepared to kill." My lords, we say never again, but history keeps repeating itself. We must stop this violence. Shalom means peace. The vast majority, note the vast majority of Muslims and Jews want peace. And we have to strive for peace in the Middle East right now. And we have to believe in it. Because as Mahatma Gandhi said, our beliefs become our thoughts become our words become our actions become our habits, and our habits form our character. So this time, commemorating Holocaust Memorial Day 2024, we must believe never again, more than ever.